When I first met you, you were only 20 years old. On a cold winter day many years ago, you staggered back home clutching an empty bottle, cursing under your breath. Grandma picked me up from the cradle and rushed to you, her face beaming with excitement. "Guaqing, you're a father now." You swayed a bit, then threw the bottle labeled Erguotu onto the floor. The shards scattered with a crash. The light reflected off the pieces, making them look like tiny, glimmering stars. "It's a girl." You glanced at me with a hint of disappointment. With a face flushed from either the cold or the alcohol, you leaned in close and blew a breath of liquor-scented air at me. That sharp scent of ethanol would become all too familiar to me, but as a newborn, I was unprepared and seemingly frightened by you, letting out a loud cry. The cold northern wind chose that moment to howl through the creaking wooden door, and snowflakes drifted down, forming a thin, grainy layer by the entrance. The wilderness outside the window was silent, making my cries all the more jarring. Annoyed, you scowled and raised a hand as if to hit me. "What are you crying for?" "There's nothing to cry about. Cry again and I'll beat you." Realizing you were serious, I immediately stopped crying out of fear. Grandma looked at you silently, then tremulously carried me back to my mother's side. "Oh, I almost forgot. I was supposed to have an older sister, but she never got to see the world because of your drunken violence. She was only 7 months old." Years later, at my high school graduation dinner, you gave a speech, reminiscing about the first time we met. You talked about my chubby little face, saying I was so cute back then, with honest features that showed I would go far in life. I didn't argue. Memory can be deceptive, but you couldn't fool me, and you couldn't fool yourself either. Just like Tolstoy said, happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. When other parents talk about their children, they speak of love and care. But you always told me to be grateful for your shelter. Every time I heard that, I would quietly lower my head, press my lips together, and hold back my tears. You never knew that when I was little, I often wished you would give me away to someone else. Maybe then I could have had a happier life. My mother left when I was very young. That day, you came home hungover and found her in bed with another man, both of them in disarray. In that moment, you acted like a normal man, filled with rage and ready to hit her as usual. But this time, the man was much stronger than you. He grabbed your hand and shoved you to the ground. You struggled to get up, stumbling and rubbing your head where you had hit the door. You pointed at my mother's face and spat out a venomous "Get out." She laughed coldly, a clear, mocking sound that was more of a relief than scorn. Outside, a crowd had gathered to watch the commotion, their eyes filled not with hatred, but with sympathy and approval. In that moment, you lost all the dignity of a husband and father. Calmly, my mother put on her coat, took out a suitcase she had already packed, and walked out with the man. I saw a familiar neighbor aunt step up to hug her, wishing her a fresh start. You leaned against the door, smoking a Zhonghua cigarette you had gotten from somewhere, your face dark, the stench of your hangover quietly permeating the air. My mother wanted to take me with her, but you wouldn't allow it. You held me tightly, even putting your hand around my neck, saying you'd rather I die than go with her. You two were at a stalemate, my face turning purple as I whimpered for help. In the end, you won. With your sly words and shameless tantrums, the court granted you custody. I once naively thought it was out of love, but I didn't realize that to you. I was just a substitute for my mother. You continued your idle ways, working odd jobs on various construction sites, often sneaking off halfway through to play mahjong at the gambling den. After 12 rounds, you drink with your cronies, stumbling home drunk in the middle of the night, calling my mother's name to get me to open the door. Fortunately, Grandma often came to see me. You would curse at her too, calling her old hag, and she would cover my ears. She was afraid I would turn out like you. My only joy back then was sleeping with Grandma. She would tell me traditional stories and the 24 filial exemplars. I asked her how you ended up this way. It turns out you were once a good kid, reading Jin Yong and Gulong, dreaming of a passionate youth. When you were 15, you fell for the prettiest girl in your class. You were fearless for her, ready to do anything. When she was bullied by a local thug, you grabbed a fruit knife from the kitchen and confronted him, disregarding everything. You stabbed him from behind, arrogantly declaring you'd rule the area from then on. Before you could finish boasting, the police arrived. You ran, but there's no escaping the law. 3 years later, you got out of juvenile detention at 18, expecting her to be waiting. But Grandma told you she had been accepted to a university in Shanghai and was studying accounting. You swore to wait for her. When she came home for winter break, she had a handsome boyfriend from Shanghai. You hid in the shadows, wearing slippers and smoking, crestfallen, as if you had lost all life's purpose, resorting to daily drunkenness. My mother was just a small-town girl looking for a wild night. Had it not been for pregnancy and maternal instincts, she could have had better choices. When she left, she said any woman who met you was destined for unhappiness. Because of you too, I stopped believing in love for many years. When I was a child, I refused to acknowledge you, even though Daddy was the first word I ever learned. My language teacher assigned us an essay titled My Family, but I wrote about a stray dog we had taken in. The teacher sent it back, insisting I write about you. A few days after I turned in my rewritten essay, you were summoned to school. In that essay, I only wrote 2 lines. My dad is dead. I don't miss him at all. He deserved to die. Had I known that deserved to die was a positive phrase, I still wouldn't have used it to describe you. I remember you bowing repeatedly to the teacher, a forced smile on your darkened face, promising to educate me properly. Back home, you took off your belt and swung it at me, truly educating me. My backside was bright red from your beating, and you started cursing my mom again, mocking me as an unwanted burden she ruthlessly abandoned. I held back my tears but longed for her deeply. When I was 10, spurred by a friend's suggestion, you decided to find work in the provincial capital and took me along. Unable to afford rent elsewhere, we ended up in a rundown urban village. During our worst financial times, you couldn't even afford vegetables. Afraid I might burn the house down using the gas stove, you bought a box of the cheapest instant noodles from the supermarket, cooking them on weekend mornings before leaving. By the time I ate them, they were already soggy. After a few times, I couldn't stand it anymore and started secretly throwing them away. During my teenage years, I was very thin, partly from poverty and the hunger that came with it. I was always the last to pay my elementary school fees. I'll never forget that day. Everyone wore new uniforms, sitting upright at their desks. Only I was in an old coat handed down from my cousin, my small face full of unease and anxiety. When new books were distributed, I didn't get any. I timidly walked up to the teacher, asking if I could have mine since you would pay the fees in the afternoon. I needed the books to cover them and start my homework. The classroom was noisy. The teacher leaned in and kindly asked, "Chinjianian, can you repeat that?" I didn't hear you clearly. So I closed my eyes, raised my voice, and outdid any soprano. "Teacher, my dad will pay the fees this afternoon." The class fell silent. The teacher smiled, patted my shoulder, and handed me all the textbooks, reassuring me it was okay. I was fortunate that my young classmates didn't yet understand or care about social class distinctions. That day after school, I sat by the slide at the back of the classroom, hugging my backpack, shrinking into a tiny ball. In the lingering summer heat, the ground was scorching. I waited for you there, watching the dappled late summer sunlight through the camphor trees fall desolately on the empty ground. I tore off bits of bread and threw them on the ground, hoping the ants scurrying to carry the food would keep me company a bit longer. As dusk approached, you finally arrived. I saw some scratches on your face, thinking it was just another one of your drunken escapades. Later, sneaking Hong Kong gangster films with the boys, I was oddly grateful that among all your vices, at least you didn't indulge in all of them. Only much later did I learn that you had almost driven your contractor to jump off a building to get my tuition fees. If he hadn't been afraid of dying, I might not have been waiting for you that day, but instead, another human tragedy worthy of the evening news. I remember that year I scored perfect marks on my finals. As a reward, you took me on your bicycle, riding through the city's streets, stopping frequently. You pointed to various high-rise buildings, saying, "I built that one. And that one too." In truth, you were just one of the countless ordinary construction workers in this city, toiling in the scorching heat and freezing cold, caked in mud. Once those buildings were completed, none bore your name. To this day, I don't know where the pride in your eyes came from. The year I started middle school, I resolutely chose to live on campus. You explained to others that it was because you didn't have time to take care of me, and I didn't expose your lie. The real reason was that you couldn't even afford the rent in the urban village anymore. From then on, I lived at school, and you stayed in a temporary dormitory at the construction site. Once, when I went there to get something, I discovered that you didn't even have a bed, just 2 layers of quilts on a straw mat. Later, you often complained about joint pain, probably an ailment that started back then. I didn't dare tell you that Mom had come to see me at school. She had remarried, to the very man you caught her with. The man treated her well. She said she was now the owner of a restaurant in Guangzhou and was very satisfied with her life. She took me to Hadaleo for a meal and bought me new clothes and skirts, which I hid in my school locker and never wore in front of you. She placed shrimp paste into my bowl and said she was planning to immigrate. She asked if I wanted to come with her. I froze, unable to respond. Seeing my reaction, she wiped away her tears. You've turned out so well. It must be because your dad has improved, right? I looked up at her. Despite the passing years, her well-maintained appearance showed no trace of time. Before leaving, she got me a bank card and has been depositing money into it every month since then. She never had more children, so we occasionally kept in touch. She showed concern for me, and I could feel the familial bond. But I never used the money on the card. During the poorest times, I survived on plain steamed buns. Prices were still low back then. That day, I ate until I was full, but as soon as I returned to the dorm, I started having diarrhea. Oddly, I missed the instant noodles you used to cook. At least, my stomach had grown accustomed to them. You never helped me with my studies. The middle school I attended ranked among the bottom 3 in the city, and I worked tirelessly to get into a district key high school. Yet, when I came home for Chinese New Year, you bragged to everyone as if I had accomplished some monumental feat. When it came time to choose between liberal arts and sciences, I, like my classmates, sought my parents' advice. You, who never even graduated middle school, didn't understand a thing. Yet, you sat there with your legs crossed, smoking a cigarette, pointing at the soap opera on TV. You blew a perfect smoke ring and said, "Of course, you should study science. You can become a doctor and save me a lot of medical bills in the future." Before you finished speaking, you started coughing, sounding like a chronic patient. You never had money and never went for health checkups. I recalled a picture in my biology textbook showing a smoker's lungs, decayed and blackened. I sneered and said okay, then chose liberal arts. I held grudges and didn't care about your health because you never cared about mine. During the summer vacation of my second year in high school, I realized I wasn't suited for academic subjects and wanted to pursue art. So, I secretly followed a master in the park, copying paintings for 2 months. He said it would be a pity if I didn't become an artist. I excitedly told you, but you threw my paints on the ground, scolding me for being irresponsible, just like my mom. I couldn't bear it anymore and finally lashed out, listing all the ways you had mistreated and beaten me over the years. You grabbed a glass of alcohol and threw it at me, the remaining liquor burning my lips. So bitter. You told me to get out, just like you did to Mom years ago. So, I went to pack my bags, thinking I still had the money Mom left me, ready to wander the world. But before I finished packing, you came in, grabbed my hand, kicked the suitcase aside, and told me dinner was ready, as if nothing had happened. As I served the rice, I saw the wrinkles at the corners of your eyes, like little fish swimming, leaving traces of struggle over the years. I thought of Mom and felt happy for her. She left early and in time, avoiding much suffering. After the college entrance exams, my scores weren't ideal, only enough for a vocational college. But I was determined to go far away, not for a promising future, but to be far from you. The night before choosing my college, you took me to a restaurant. Half a liter of white wine later, you got drunk, your eyes red, grabbing my hand, crying incoherently, "Nan, Nan, you're all I have." After all these years of pretending, that was probably the one time you were sincere. So I stayed. When I started university, you bought a house in the provincial capital. We celebrated my graduation and our move simultaneously. It was an old, subsidized housing unit, looking quite shabby from the outside. You made a big deal of inviting all our relatives, boasting that this house near the high-speed rail station would increase in value several times in the coming years. In your grandiose talk, they really believed that the property would be worth much more in the future. Finally, I mustered the courage to invite my friends over. But their looks of surprise as they entered the neighborhood hurt me deeply. Indeed, who would want to live in such a cramped, poorly maintained environment with trash strewn everywhere? 2 years later, when the neighborhood was slated for demolition, I found out the house wasn't in your name because it was a leasehold property. The original owner, seeing the potential profit, only agreed to refund half the purchase price, claiming the other half as rent. You, once again, wanted to fight them in your usual fiery manner, but lacked the vigor of your youth. I picked you up from the police station, and you rubbed your hands together, saying you wanted to eat hot pot but had no money and wanted me to treat you. I glared at you, and you lowered your head in shame, like a child. You were never tall, only 169 centimeters, and now you seemed even shorter, making it easy for me to look down at the top of your head. Your hair was graying and lifeless, lying there quietly. I sighed and, with a gentle voice as if coaxing a child, said, "Why don't we go to the market, buy some groceries, and cook at home? It's cleaner and cheaper." You praised me for being sensible and frugal, and I responded with a bitter smile. Later, I managed to get the rest of the money from the original owner and combined it with the money Mom had left me, handing it all over to you. You asked how I got it all back, wondering if they had a change of heart. I showed off my biceps and said, "Old Chen's daughter, no joke." I scared them so much they peed their pants. You laughed heartily, taking the nearly 20,000 yuan and returning to our hometown, buying a small 2-story house. The elderly, unaware of the full story, praised you for returning in glory. You smiled and handed out red envelopes. Your life had been wasted away like this. As an adult, I preferred to earn money through tutoring, distributing flyers, and doing several part-time jobs rather than relying on you financially. Your days became even more carefree. With the internet installed at home, you spent your mornings on your phone and afternoons playing cards and mahjong at the neighboring shop, becoming an incorrigible old gambler. After I graduated, I stayed in the provincial capital for work and got a boyfriend. The distance between us grew even greater than before. You ultimately developed cancer, lung cancer. You had often complained of pain over the phone, and I had urged you to get checked, but you never listened. You claimed hospitals were just scams to steal money from honest people. It wasn't until you collapsed at the mahjong table and were taken to the hospital by ambulance. That day, I traveled nonstop to get home, switching from taxis to trains, then minibuses to the county hospital, with my heart in my throat. I kept berating myself for not insisting more, for not dragging you to the hospital if necessary. In reality, your lifestyle had always been problematic. Smoking, drinking, these bad habits slowly eroded your health like opium, leading inevitably to this day, where gradual damage turned catastrophic and decay was an unavoidable outcome. When you woke and saw me, you asked for a cigarette, saying you had a craving. I finally snapped, yelling at you from the doorway, chastising you for not valuing your life, for deserving such a lonely end. Daughter, I still have you. I was ready to leave you then, but those words stopped me. I turned back to see you grinning, revealing yellowed teeth that made your lips look even paler and weaker. In that moment, I was defeated, left with only silent resignation. In your last month, you gave up treatment and returned home. I threw away all the alcohol and cigarettes in the house, bought you nicotine gum, took time off work to stay with you, cooked your favorite dishes every day, took you on walks by the lake, and even knitted you a white scarf. For the first time in over 20 years, I truly treated you with respect and care. On your last day, you shakily pulled out a property deed and a bank card from under your pillow and handed them to me. You worried I wouldn't find them, said the house could be my wedding home, praised the boyfriend I had chosen as someone trustworthy. Your last words in this world were, "Daddy is sorry to you and your mom." In truth, the only person you wronged was yourself. At your funeral, I invited Mom, but she didn't come. I passed on your apology to her. She waved it off, saying, "Between husband and wife, there's no talk of owing. Not being a couple, there's no talk of owing." If you had been even a fraction as insightful as Mom, your life might not have been so hard. Before your cremation, I couldn't resist taking one last look at you. I was saddened to see that this was the most dignified you had ever looked in life, dressed in a smooth, silk burial suit, your face so heavily made up that it concealed all signs of your smoking and drinking. But your brow was furrowed. My boyfriend said it was because you were still worried about me. I shook my head in denial, remembering all the times I nearly couldn't go on because of you. But before I could finish my thought, I collapsed onto his shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. He held me gently, his eyes glistening with tears, and in my grief-stricken gaze, I mistook him for a young you. I cried even harder, realizing that no amount of tears could suffice for all those years. But this time, you were truly gone from me. You were so cruel, leaving me to miss you every year from now on. That day, I bid you farewell, like a stream parting from the mountain's embrace, left only with tearful sighs.